Hey everybody, this is Grace. And this video, I want to talk about something that happened way back in probably the early 1980s, when I was in high school. And I would think it had to be sometime between 79 and 81. And it was a really strange, very odd situation. And thing that happened. But I have to tell some of the story of, what was life like back then. Many of us, I think many people who watch me know what life was like back then. But this is not going to be, like I said in one of my videos, it's not going to be one of those commercials that they sum up the whole story in 28 seconds. And there are people out there who do expect that to be all summed up, and you just need to get to the point. I've had comments like that. Well, if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. I never liked that way of thinking, but I've said that before. But yeah, over the past few years, I really understand it. Anyway, to get to the story. Okay, back then, like I said, I was in high school in a town town. Um, any student that was in high school and had a car, had a driver's license and had a car, you could park it on campus. And for lunch, you could go to lunch outside of campus. You could go to, like we used to do, go to McDonald's or Sonic or whatever for lunch, or just go to the park. Okay, you did not have to be, on campus for lunch, and you could have your friends go with you. Okay, I don't know if they still do that to this, now. Any place, I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that. But then you could. And, yes, you had to be back to your class on time and all that. And some people, they worked. And so they were allowed to leave, whatever. Now, that was back then. Okay. Now, also back then, there weren't cell phones. I don't know when the cell phone was invented. I don't know what year. But I know my dad had one when I was young. I don't know how old. But he was, they were very rare, and they were about as big as a console in cars. They were huge. He had one because he was on dialysis and he drove himself. And he needed that in case something happened. He could call emergency, for emergency. And, but anyway, we didn't have cell phones. So back then, and that's important. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. Okay, and I don't remember when it was, but I was one of the first in my group, in school, to have a car. Mine was, I think it was a Chevy Impala, and it kind of looked like a banana. It was yellow and white, and I loved that car. And of course, and I got my driver's license when I was 16, and I was 16 and a junior in school, and I was 17 when I graduated. So anyway, so I had mine, and then a friend of mine, she was the only other one in our group that had one, but she got it, I think the next year, and it was a baby blue, I think, Volkswagen Bug. I don't know, what are those called, Bug? I don't know. I remember people going down the road and we'd see one, we'd go slug bug, and he hit somebody, lightly slug them. I remember that. I don't know if you remember that, if you were alive then. I don't know if they still make them or still on the road. I think I've seen them. But anyway. Okay. Now this friend of mine, she was a wild child in our group. She was a wild child, plain and simple. And I remember one time I let her drive my car, and I looked over and she was going 95. Yeah, did they even go that fast? Yeah, I was like, oh my God, she's going to kill us. And she never drove my car again, as far as I remember. But when she got hers, it was, it didn't really, she couldn't speed that much in it. And like I said, I don't remember if it was during lunch or what, but she and I, like I say, during our lunch hours, many of us in my group would go to, Sonic. It was quite often Sonic because we liked just sitting there outside. And if we went to McDonald's, it wasn't, it was so busy with so many people, there was nowhere just to sit outside and eat. Sometimes we'd get our food and we'd go to the park and, park there and eat. And so that was something usual that we did. But one of the things, and to this day, I don't remember what was the situation that this came about. Now, back then, this was also something that was common that, especially young women, women my age, girls, when I was a teenager, teenagers, to this day, I see it as stalking. Okay, but they would go and take their, like after school, and they would drive around the guy that they were interested in, or their boyfriend's home, and see what they were up to. Just sneaky driving by. I'm not saying they're going there and knocking on the door kind of thing. No, they're just driving by to see what they're up to. Yeah. And this friend was one of them that liked to do that, and sometimes I was with her, and that could have been, I wouldn't know that she was going to do that, but I could have been with her when she decided she was going to do this. But anyway, it just so happened that we were, in her bug that day, in her car, and I still remember the feeling. Maybe some of you, can relate to that. You remember the whole feeling of the air, the way things look. But you can't even maybe remember where it was exactly, but the feeling of it. And I remember we were driving through this neighborhood, and there was a lot of pink and purple for some reason. But we were driving through this neighborhood, and like I said, it was probably something like that. She was, snooping on somebody, and her Volkswagen broke down. Okay, this was an older one, of course. My car was an older one then too. We didn't get new ones back then, and so anyway, it broke down. No cell phones. What are you going to do? Back where it wasn't near any place like would have a payphone. Back then we had payphones. Didn't have anything like that anywhere around. So what we were going to do? Nobody would know where we were, why we were there. So we're going to have to do what? Which is not safe to do, is to go to somebody's house, knock on the door, and ask if we can use the phone. Very, truly not safe at all. I mean, then it was not as bad as now, I would think, but you never know. It's just not always safe. Okay, and then this was definitely one of those situations where, yeah, it wasn't that great situation. So we walked around. Now here I am. I'm this tall, teenager, and I'm a tall woman now. I think, built, rather muscular. In that age, I used to do a lot of sports and stuff. I was not on any teams, but I just loved playing sports. Not so much now. I don't think I ever play sports, but I'm a computer person these days. But anyway, and my friend, she was just an average height, kind of small, teenager. And anyway, there we are on the road, walking around, and I don't remember if she left to go call somebody, and I said, I'll stick with the car, or what, or I went with her. I don't remember that part. Me, I was back then, and I guess would be now, more protective of other people, myself and others. And all I would have to do is show up. People would, it was quite intimidating. And I didn't really let it sink in then, and I still don't, but anyway, we went, I remember we were at this house. Maybe she was in first and I went in. But we went into this house, okay, to ask to use the phone. And it was, this was a kind of a crowded street. House next to another. Not a big distance between the houses. And you might feel safer, but not always. So anyway, we went up to this house, and like I said, I remember things like a purple color. Okay, maybe the woman's house was a very soft purple, pinkish purple, I don't know, house. And so anyway, it kind of odd but pretty but odd. So it turned out, it was a woman, and she was probably around the age I am now, in her 50s or so, 40s or 50s. It was a woman. I don't remember what she looked like, but I do remember she was kind of like motherly looking, but she wasn't. She apparently lived by herself. From what I remember, she would live by herself and all that. And anyway, we went to ask to use the phone, and she wanted to, yes, but I don't remember why, how it happened or what, but it was more like she wanted us to wait there or something, and anyway, have like a tea party with her. Whatever it was, yeah. But here's the thing. As like when you first walk in, you might notice something a little bit odd. Okay, it's something so new to you. This woman's, her home had so much to look at that you can't take everything in at once. Okay. But anyway, as we were there, she started showing us, from what I remember, even more, dragging stuff out. And I think my friend had already used the phone, called her stepfather, and he was on his way. It was in the same town where we lived. And anyway, so we're sitting there, and the woman starts showing us more. Well, we could already see some of it, and it was kind of freaky to us. And we didn't really know what to do. We were young teenagers. But it was that the woman, she didn't have any children or anything, like I said, from what I remember. But what she had was a bunch of dolls. Dolls. You know the kind of dolls I'm talking about. The ones that are antiques. She dressed them up, had names for them, that kind of thing, from what I remember. She just had a lot of them. An unbelievable amount of them in the room that we were in, and then she brought up some and showed us these. She was proud of them. Just, freaking us out. We were both, from what I would say, we were both in shock that somebody would have so many dolls and be so attached to them. Antiques, fine, but yeah. And that, I didn't know, had never heard of it myself. I don't know if my friend had, but I never heard of people being collectors like that. And this woman was apparently a collector, but I think I remember feeling back then, this woman's more than just a collector. There's something wrong with her all around. And, now you hear a lot. I mean, from that time on, I was a teenager. And, of course, I've heard of, more and more about people, and then you hear more and more about stereotype of people who do something like that, okay, to collect dolls. Some of them are legitimate collectors. This is their thing, to collect dolls. But you also see a lot of scary movies, where they have this kind of thing in it, people collecting those kinds of dolls, and so on and so forth. But like I said, I didn't know it then. I was young. And but anyway, I remember we got out of there, and her stepfather, he was always, back then, a really mean man as it was. And I remember him being very angry with us about the whole situation. And I didn't know what was going on there. But yeah, he was very angry. He fixed it. It was a battery or something, something like that. It wasn't something big. And we left. But yeah, that was one of those memories from childhood, things that stick to you. I thought, what is the reason? I think there was something on TV about somebody being a collector of those type of dolls recently, and I saw just a little bit of a commercial maybe or something, and it reminded me of that. But what about you? Have you ever had an experience like that really stuck with you? And that one definitely has stuck with me. But what about you? I think I told all the story, all the pieces to it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.